Thanks to everyone here at Web Summit for coming out. You get a great conversation ahead of you right now with Eoin and Libby. So, in an era where attention is currency and outrage drives engagement, the line between truth and profit in media has never been more blurred. There's real tension here. One hallmark of the Trump administration, both of them, has been their dizzying news cycles. Steve Bannon, he calls it flooding the zone with shit. And it's a deliberate strategy. It's a disorienting technique that makes it extremely difficult to grasp the nature of change that's happening right in front of your eyes. There's just too many headlines to take in. One change we've seen in the past 15 months now is how quickly the Trump administration has deployed the authoritarian tactic of media capture. Libby, set the table for us. What's media capture? How and where has it been used? And specifically, how's the Trump administration deploying it now?
Media capture is established through the concentration of power in media and the unjournalistic ethic of violating the editorial firewall, right? I've spent my life fighting authoritarians around the world, and when you are trying to establish a authoritarian government, the first field of battle is the information landscape. You have to own the story, and traditionally it's been very difficult for new tyrants to establish that kind of control over society. But with the escalation of the concentration of power and the complicity between tech and tyranny, what we're seeing is a huge acceleration. And the tactics are the same, right? They're lawfare, suing you into silence. There's, the FCC threatening to yank your license if they didn't like you. I mean, they raided a journalist's home to look for their sources. All of this is standard, and the whole purpose is to allow the tyrant or the administration to basically define reality. And the thing that's so different now is just a handful of people control the reality we live in.
It's true, and it's frightening. And on the front lines of it, we feel it every minute of the day that we're working. That's the bureaucratic approach to media consolidation. But what's juicing the trend to a huge extreme lately is how Silicon Valley figures have been investing in media and pumping up their influence through business and politics through that channel. Eoin, in your book, Owned, you tell the story of how right-wing billionaires like Elon Musk turn to the media as their next investment. They really want that source of influence. Larry Ellison, his ascension from Oracle owner to multimedia, multi-platform puppet master, has come on really, really fast. It's a great example of not only how they do it, but how they do it so fast. Can you walk us through what Ellison has managed to pull off in this past 15 months?
Yeah, well, I think it's part of the flood the zone thing that Libby was talking about. A lot of these tech guys who have political ambitions are flooding the zone. They are buying up media properties. They are throwing their money into a lot of different platforms. We really saw this, I think, 6 or 7 years ago with Clubhouse, investments in Substack, Rumble, Callin, a number of different platforms. And again, this is like flooding the zone. They're just throwing a lot of money at the problem. What Ellison has done is a little bit different, but it's kind of what I consider the next stage of this evolution. Once you have kind of decentralized and driven down the value and the power of these institutional mainstream media organizations, then they're ripe for the picking for someone like Ellison. So now Ellison comes in, he buys up Paramount. His son David, but Larry is a part of this as well. He buys up CBS News. That's part of it. I really think that as far as the investment for money, CBS News is actually not a huge part of that. It's just an added bonus. So they now have CBS News that they can use as a propaganda machine to then ingratiate themselves to Trump, who will then approve other mergers. who will then approve other mergers, and they can ingratiate themselves to him, and that can continue to further and to push forward their business interests.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a natural evolution of this process. I wouldn't call it a like a plan. Like, I don't think that this was something that they planned out from the beginning. I think it's just this is just what has happened naturally, and that's where we've arrived at this point now.
Yeah, that's big microphone tech trying to silence you, by the way. It's 2 days in a row I've noted for you. From TikTok to 60 Minutes, which is owned by CBS News, I mean, that's a huge cultural swing. They're able to get you anywhere you want to be or anywhere you want to watch. And they've done it in a really short time. Libby, in a media ecosystem that's prioritizing content over truth, what have we lost in the past 15 months that people out here might not even realize?
We've lost the true discussion online because all the messages have become so concentrated and extreme. Moreover, because of all these things we're talking about, the biggest muzzle is self-censorship, right? Not only are the corporations who are owned by people who are violating the editorial firewall, but also, if you say the wrong thing, you could get sued, subpoenaed, your house raided, and so self-censorship is the most effective way to control the information landscape, because people are afraid to tell the truth.
So the short answer to that question is, we don't even know what we're missing because it's not being reported.
Yes.
People are afraid to do that, or intimidated, or it may just not be worth their hassle. We're seeing these attacks on the First Amendment in the U.S. on so many fronts. I mean, just in the last couple of weeks alone, the FBI director is suing The Atlantic for $250 million. That's a page out of the Trump playbook where he sued the Wall Street Journal for $10 billion. That, by the way, was thrown out of court just last week. And then even this week, the Defense Department or the government subpoenaing the Wall Street Journal over its reporting in the Iran war. So we see these chilling effects. This is not normal. This is not normal. What's going on here, Libby?
Basically, it's the silencing of dissent and the control of the peoples. And I've seen this before in China, say. The natural human condition wants to distance itself from people who get punished by the government. What they don't realize is that it's everybody. And I think we talked about this profound example I had when I was at Radio Free Asia. You may have heard about the melamine poisoning in baby formula. So in China, they suddenly realized that the milk products have been cut for profiteering, and they were poisoning the babies. And China at the time, it was a one-child policy, so it was a really, really, really big deal that their nutrition source was so compromised. But the government basically scrubbed the entire internet for any news about this milk thing. And the next day, the parents weren't even talking about it. Everybody understands that if the government removes something, nobody should talk out of line, because you'll get disappeared. Mm-hmm. And so that's the message that is sent through all of these actions, and particularly the lawsuits, because even if the lawsuit is thrown out, who has the money to be able to defend themselves?
Yeah. And I want to turn to you, Eoin, because you're on the ground. I mean, you're feeling that every day. It's painful. Tell us about what it's like to be a journalist facing that kind of pressure.
Yeah, well, we are referring to, I was sued for defamation over the content of my book by one of the subjects, the journalist Matt Taibbi. It was thrown out of court last week, but I got to, thank you. But I got to experience what it's like to have that level of pressure. Now, he sued me and my publisher, so the financial cost was not something that I've had to worry about. But it's very stressful. to be the subject of litigation. And just because of the nature of the legal system, once you are being sued, you are expected for your own protection that you have to be kind of quiet. You're not expected to really criticize the person who you have been critical of. It is a kind of de facto silencing. We didn't really let that silence us too much, but I had to kind of like watch what I said, which was a very like odd experience for me. And while his case was very weak and his lawyer did not seem to have done a lot of prep, which was like to my benefit, but I could still tell that there was like a lot of psychological stress, a lot of stress. And I think that this goes to what Libby was saying about like this feeling of like when people are being punished, whether or not it's a justifiable punishment, that pressure, that social pressure, that psychological pressure does exist. And people kind of, it's not so much that they distance themselves from you, but they are careful in how they interact with you for their own protection, which is completely understandable, I think. And just to kind of continue on this in a more broad example, the tech industry's control of media and the tech industry's use of, or people in the tech industry's use of these defamation lawsuits to target their critics is, I think, amplified by the fact that while in the past, the past few hundred years, we've seen industrialists, we've seen wealthy people fund aspects of the news and media. The tech industry is somewhat unique in that the tech industry and media are intrinsically tied together. Mm-hmm. So it's not somebody who's just like funding a project and not really being involved. The people who are funding the projects made their fortunes in large part by kind of pushing this stuff forward. So I just want to like note that they are more tied into this, and so they feel that they have, I think, more of an investment in it.
There's skin in the game.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought in the tech companies there, because that's where we're going next. I mean, we've talked about government censorship, we've talked about self-censorship, but there's platform censorship, and people on the right and people on the left have been talking about this for a long time. They all have their lenses when they go into it, but the platforms, and especially with the algorithms, they do pick and choose what you do get to read. Whether or not Eoin pours his heart into it doesn't matter. There's a great book out, came out last year, but it's Careless People by Sarah Wynne Williams. And you won't find a lot of chatter about that on Facebook because it's about Facebook. So, Eoin, you run a really well-read Substack newsletter. You've moved, I wouldn't say you've moved to that platform from others, but how is the Substack movement different than what we've seen in prior social media for news?
I think it's just a user experience for the writer. The user experience is very easy. The platform is very convenient to use. You can reach people through email because people do actually check their emails. It still has, I'm sure, platform manipulation, algorithmic manipulation. I'm not completely sure how all of that stuff works. I have some theories, but they're not really worth going into at the moment. But moving work over to Substack allows kind of anybody to get the word out on their stuff, and I think that it provides a good service in that way. It's certainly not a neutral platform. It's been invested in by certain people. I think that there are certain things on Substack that I wish weren't there, certain parts of the platform that I'm not crazy about, but I don't think that any platform is probably going to be perfect. But I think that really this is almost like the self-starter side of this, this kind of diffusal of the kind of mainstream media, the big newsrooms. Now we have people who can go out there, they can report from the ground, they can send it out to their audiences. Overall, I think this is a good thing. Yeah. I think it's a good thing to have more information out there, to have more people reporting on stuff. The obvious downside of it is that there's not like a very strong editorial control over it, so there are certain standards that are missing. But just speaking for myself, speaking from somebody who has been in the newsletter game for a while now, I think that overall, I think it's a positive way of getting the message out.
Well, and you had a key word there, newsletter. I mean, it's just email. And the wonderful thing about these simple technologies, and we see them all over the halls here, that they're effective, you can have that direct relationship via email. So I don't like to say Substack in replacement for the word newsletter and therefore email, but it's just email. And where we're going next, though, from email to AI is a completely different beast and monster. We have time enough for one more question. I'm so glad we can get to this. Email feels quaint against AI. It's here now. It's subsuming all of the internet's content. In a world where these massive AI platforms are desperately searching for revenue, so is journalism, by the way.
And nonprofits.
Yeah. But they're devouring content like news, and reporting has become a commodity. It's completely disintermediated from its source by AI. I want to put this to both of you. Libby, why don't you start? How can journalism and artificial intelligence coexist? Because we're going to have to live in a world with both of them.
I think so, and this is the optimistic thing I'll say. Truth resonates. Truth lands. People feel the power of truth more and more in a propagandistic world. So I would say that, yes, it's difficult, but it will never replace journalism, never. And,
not that it would replace it, but how do they coexist? I mean, I think there's been a lot of good, smart regulation in countries that are not the United States, because we don't seemingly want to do that. Can you talk about some of those?
Sure, like in Australia. Australia has been a leader in trying to address the safety issues from the platforms. They were the first to introduce the content creator law, and totally forgot the question.
Well, tell us a little bit about regulations that have helped to make platforms safer, and then how they could maybe you could spin on about how we might apply those to AI.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling on AI and how it applies to journalism is essentially that this technology needs to be seen as a tool, and maybe like less of a threat and less of a kind of overwhelming positive. I think we just need to look at it as a tool, something that can be applied, something that we can use in our work.
Yes.
And that's separate from the regulation space that you're talking about, obviously. But these are almost, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but these are kind of almost also kind of societal interests, like regulation, things that are trying to deal with what problems could be exacerbated by the misuse of this technology. But ultimately, I don't find the technology itself to be either good or bad. I simply see it as a tool that will be integrated into people's work. I'm not saying that it should be generating content or writing for journalists, but for
research.
For research, yeah, it can be quite helpful for that.
Research. Yeah.
Well, we are just about up on time. Thank you so much, Libby, Eoin. It's just been a fantastic chat. Thank you.
Thank you.